Hello everyone, my name is Bridget and today we're going to be talking about moon cycle free bleeding and the sacred time of menstruation and periods. Okay, this is juicy to say the least, and I know that this is a subject that a lot of people maybe even don't like because the cultural narrative around bleeding, around moon times is horrific. Right? It's just like, cramps, my period, bleeding, it's messy, stuff in a tampon. It's this thing that we want to shelf and push away so that we can get on with the pace of life as it has been created by distorted structures of the matrix. Now, I want to invite you into a completely other dimension and perspective around this subject as an opportunity to align with an actual super sacred gateway into your health, balance, intuition, your psychic nature, your intuitive nature, your connection with your body, your connection with earth, that is so nourishing to yourself and to life when you embrace and ease and melt into this flow of this phase, that it will change your life. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this conversation is going to be a free flow sharing in the sense that I'm going to let this be as long as it needs to be. On YouTube, it's like people's attention span is 6 to 12 minutes. But I'm going to let this flow because I want it to be full transmission of what is possible. And of course there will be expansions and other videos and other topics based around this, but I really want this video to be all-encompassing to bring through the immensity and the beauty of what this holds. I also very much so want to welcome men into this conversation. If you're a man watching this, feel free. You're encouraged. You're not looking through a door that you're not supposed to. You can be here. And for women that have partners or guy friends, absolutely share this with them. The more that men can understand and know about this process and what we're experiencing and its purpose and different things, the more that we can be supported. And that is really helpful, right? Because there's also these distortions from the masculine that then come on to us around, ew, it's gross, and come on, you're all PMSy, and right, all those narratives. And so this conversation will help educate. We were never educated on what to do. Women, we were not initiated into our coming of age. It was, for me, it was, I started bleeding and my mom was like, here, put in a tampon. And it hurt and I didn't have even enough blood to put in the tampon. And that was my first experience. And so part of it is rewriting and bringing back the remembrance of our sacred bleed and how absolutely beautiful it is. So I'm going to be getting into, because I'm talking about that a lot, but I want to get into the actual practicalities as to why and how this so influences your health, your spirituality, your emotional mental states, how you can help assist the earth and the environment profoundly through your bleed. There's so much here that literally gets flushed down the toilet or thrown in the trash. That's how we look at this, is we're just like, let's make it go away. Let's throw it away. And when we bring all of this back, when we bring these aspects of ourselves back and know how to harness them, then they can nourish ourselves and life. Now, with what I'm about to share, this is more of an advanced, extreme version of what's possible. But I like painting that picture. I like painting, at least for a good part, the destination. And you don't have to get there overnight. I want to very much so put that disclaimer at the beginning. This is a process. And this is a deep process of just beginning to listen again. That's what this is about, is a deep, deep listening. And so if there's certain things that you're like, yeah, that's exciting. Okay, I can take that step. Great. If there's certain things where you're like, that's strange, but I'll be open to it, Bridget. and I'll contemplate what you're saying, and maybe something will come over time of it. That's fine. But I just want to paint what's possible. So I titled this video, it has free bleeding in the title. Now, I don't know what your perception of free bleeding is. You might not know what it is at all. You might perceive it as the marathon runner that like ran with nothing and just bled down her legs. So like free bleeding has this idea that you can just bleed everywhere, and I guess all over your bed and your house. I don't know how that extreme version of it works, but there's an in-between version, which I want to talk about, that is really, really profound, that still is in the category of free bleeding. So, culturally, we live in this world that doesn't stop for women needing to bleed, that has no actual rhythm, right? It doesn't have all of the seasons. It doesn't have all of the different energies of death, of the beginning of life, of fruition, of waning. It doesn't have those lunar aspects to it. Culture just is balls to the wall, right? It's distorted. It's a 3D program. So we're faced with this as women, and it's like we don't fit into that if we do start acknowledging our greater rhythms. And so often we go, let's just stuff in a freaking tampon and continue to work, continue to exercise, continue to live life as normal, continue to have sex, continue to do all the things. But we are exact microcosms as women of the macrocosm. The macrocosm of Earth, the macrocosm of Moon. And this is really important to know. So the cultural narrative when tampons started, particularly in the early 1930s, that was the invent of the tampon, right? Stuff it in there. And what that's doing is that's actually damming our flow, right? We have a natural flow, and that's damming it. Put in that tampon, put in that moon cup, and that is damming a flow. If we are microcosms as women, what is that doing to the macrocosm of the planet? It dams it. The consciousness of us reflects into the consciousness of nature. I want to weave this in because as you start to understand this, you realize your responsibility and the profound nature that you have as a creator, not only when you're fertile, but when you're also letting go. And so, as just one example, that's one of the energies that's coming in when we block and dam this flow. Now, I want to also normalize that before the 1930s, generations of women for thousands of years didn't have tampons or moon cups. They bled into, at that time, we have better technology now, so don't be scared. They bled into rags. They bled into hay or different plant material. And that blood was all of it gifted back to the earth. In those times, generally too, we weren't peeing in and pooing into our water, right? So it wasn't even mixed with water back then. It was just given back to the earth. And not like a little cup full as a little ceremonial dose to a tree, one time during your moon. All of it, all of that information, all of that stem cell information, all that genetic material, all of those imprints of what the women were experiencing during that time, all the nourishment and nutrients of that blood, all of it was going back into the earth. Now, with the advent of tampons and trash cans and toilets and all these wonderful amenities of modern life, yes, in a certain respect of utilitarian and sanitary and one sense value, it's very helpful. We've gone away from that. So in our modern brains, we're like, ew, that's horrible, and who would do that? All of our ancestors did it. All women did it. And there were things that happened because they did that were profoundly balancing to them. Okay, keep going with me on this. Now, today, there are around 2 billion women bleeding on the planet. In this next moment, I really want you to tap into your intuitive, psychic, connected nature. And think about, in this thought experiment, realizing that not all of these women have modern amenities, but that billions of women's blood every month, this blood that we're connected to, right? When we bleed, that is an information aspect of us. That has our genetics, that has stem cells, that has all kinds of information. All of that blood is going into sewer systems, usually municipal systems. So your blood that you are still connected to, even though it's left you, is now in shit. Like, that is actually what you're psychically connected to as your blood goes into that, okay? So that's one area of where a lot of women's blood is, mixed with water, mixed with pee, all that stuff. Now, women's blood is also being thrown away, right? So you put in a tampon, you wipe yourself, the blood goes into the garbage can. That garbage goes to a dump. So the other aspect of your genetics, which is connected, which you're completely telepathically, energetically connected to, but you're not necessarily aware of this yet until this moment. And even energetically, it's just so normalized, and we've forgotten that, we'll get to how this can shift in a minute, that your blood is in a dump and you're psychically connected to that dump. And all of that nutrition, all of that information is in a large part, for most of these billions of women, in these areas. That's where the blood is going. It's crazy to me, like when I actually thought through all of that and going, wow, that would make me off, that would make me crazy, or that would feel imbalancing in certain ways and create distortion. It just would, right? There's something that feels really off about that. I hope you feel that too. So what's the alternative, right? How do we go about, okay, Bridget, it's modern times now. It's not great grandma times. How do we go about this that we're not putting our blood in the sewer, we're not putting our blood in the dump, but we're then collecting it? And you're saying, Bridget, to collect all of it, not just like a nice medicinal dose for a tree. So how do we do this in a way that also isn't damning us and damning the earth, right? Because we're the micro of the macro. And also not just bleeding down our legs on everything. Okay, right. There's a lot of components here. So you may have already heard about this, but this is what I have been doing for over a year now. And it's been life-changing, and we'll get into some of the other actual, tangible benefits for you specifically. You can, I'm sure, connect to some of the benefits already, which are reusable pads. Reusable pads and reusable underwear that absorb all of the blood. Also, I have the links to these panties and pads down in the description, so be sure to go click on those links and order them right away. Okay, so we're going to get into all the benefits, and especially environmentally. We haven't even added in the environment in this sense yet. So these are incredible. We have a technology that our great-grandmas didn't have. They were bleeding into hay, which was amazing, but now we have different things. So I really love using organic cotton reusable pads. They have clips that go around your underwear, and so it's just like a pad that you would buy that you would throw away, but it collects all the blood. And then there's the reusable panties, and the reusable panties, they absorb a lot of blood. You'd be surprised, like the whole leakage challenge, I'm hearing all the naysays here, but the leakable challenge, they really do absorb a lot, more than you would think. And I want to get into more of the benefits, and then I'll talk more about specific details and preferences and different things about, the actual use of the products. But there's to say, so the solution is to then bleed into a reusable pad. There's nothing up you, there's nothing blocking you. And those blockages of the tampons and moon cups are not good for your health. And they can cause all kinds of challenges. Even if they're organic tampons. If they're not organic tampons and not organic pads, there are insane amounts of pesticides and chemicals and creepy ass stuff in those tampons. But even if you're using organic cotton ones, and even if you're using a Moon cup, it still has a detrimental effect on your health and on your menstruation. And if you're really keyed into it, you can feel that. When I transitioned from organic tampons to a Moon cup so that I could collect, I had more cramping. And I don't know if any of you guys experienced this. And there are other long-term negative effects to using that. So I want to add that into the conversation as well. So the idea is if you can, and if you feel the inspiration and the volition around what I'm saying right now, the idea is to begin transitioning to these reusable pads. And now let's get into some of the benefits of what this will do specifically for you. So this will transform your moon cycle. This will transform your cramps. Like a lot of the crampage will go away. One of the things that comes up when we're talking about, say, maybe bleeding into pads, maybe you already do that, the ones that you throw away, is smell. This will transform the smell. What this is doing is it's allowing nature to flow. And when things can flow, things don't get distorted and mucky. And so it might take several moon cycles. It might take years. I don't know how long it's going to take you, but I have seen a dramatic effect where I bleed less. My moon cycles have less blood and are less days. There's also less lingering that I notice that happens on those final days. It cleans up very nicely. I also used to have some level of smell. I know a lot of us do. And that smell has completely actually gone away from me. I have no cramping at this point. And they are easeful moon cycle periods, particularly on a physical level. Like on a physical level, I'm just like, this is a breeze. Like this feels quite amazing, actually. So and then of course you're not having the negative effects of having those other things in you that can cause other different kinds of health problems. So it's drastically different on a health level to be doing this. Now, I want to say that's really important to note and add into this conversation that I live a very clean lifestyle, and I eat very, very healthy, and I detox often, and so it's really important to note those things. So it felt like the last kind of like piece to click in for everything to flow beautifully. So I want to preface that because it's really important to do those other things too, so that you are having the fully like clean moon cycles. And there's other ways to make sure that you're supporting your moon cycle that comes up emotionally and physically throughout the moon cycle, right? The whole moon cycle is a culmination that then leads to the bleed. So there's a lot of different pieces along the way that are really important to put into place so that you have a beneficial moon cycle. So it's been transformative on a health, ease, breeze, yummy level for me doing this experience. So for the whole time while I'm on my moon, I am collecting them in pads. Okay, we're going to get into some of the other details. I know you have questions coming up in just a second. So then on an environmental level, which I really, really, really want to touch on, because I know that anyone watching this does care about our Mother Earth and does want to help in any way that you can to make it a better place. And as women, we have a lot of influence on this. I want to read some of these numbers to you. 7 billion tampons are discarded each year. 7 billion. Oh, this is just in the US, excuse me. Just in the US, 7 billion tampons. Okay. Remember, all of those are going into the trash. So all of those women's blood is just sitting in the dump. And all of our psychic energy is connected to dumps. Okay, great. But all of that is... most of those tampons are probably toxic little bombs, right? They're not the organic ones. And so that is a lot of chemicals. That is a lot of waste. That is a lot, right? And then we have 12 billion pads. Again, this is just America. This is just America numbers. 12 billion pads are sitting there, these creepy plastics and toxins and fragrances, just sitting there steeping in the dumps and trash cans, right? So that's a lot of environmental footprint happening there. So by using reusable pads that can last for months and maybe just replacing them once or twice a year, we're tremendously helping and shifting on an environmental level our footprint of plastics, of toxins, of use, of all kinds of things. So, and I understand that if you're like, well, a moon cup doesn't require very much. Yeah, I understand it doesn't require very much, but it does have the other health consequences, as well as the blockage of the flow, which leads to other cramps and microcosm of the macrocosm, right? So this is a really, really good alternative for beautiful earth on an environmental level too. So we have the health benefit, we have the environmental benefit, and now on an emotional, spiritual level, we are much more happy and friendly because everything's flowing naturally. Our psychic energy is not connected to dumps and sewer systems, so that's going to have a beneficial impact on our energy and emotions. And one thing that's so amazing and beautiful, again, is that you're collecting all of it, right? And then what happens is you're going to give all of it, I'll tell you how in a minute, to the earth. So that means at this point for me, I'm capturing almost all of my blood and giving it all to the earth. And what this does is it invites earth. It invites the mother into your life. It creates a line of energetic and telepathic connection with the planet so that she can hear and she can feel and she can understand what you're experiencing. And because there's this telepathic link of information exchange that happens with this freaking vibrant stem cell blood, okay? And so through that, because I've heard of a lot of actually close friends, they have just even started giving a little bit of blood to the earth, and all of a sudden their, ovarian cysts go away, right? Like there's a major energetic and spiritual thing that happens that I wish there was science around this, but luckily we're intuitive, so we can just tune into it, that we don't even comprehend the immensity of that power of exchange that's happening with Earth, and how she can give back to us energetically and nourish us in ways that we don't even know. It's like when you are doing the Anastasia way of putting a seed in your mouth and then planting that seed, and then that plant grows for you, exactly for whatever you need, and then you eat it and it nourishes you specifically in a beautiful way. The same thing is happening with the earth, and she can give and transmit to you in a different way. And then that information also helps her because it's full of nutrients and vitality that is also giving back to her. So what happens is you're in a reciprocal relationship with her, the microcosm, macrocosm, and this relationship creates immense grounding, immense connection, communication, nourishment, support, all kinds of things on a spiritual, emotional, psychological, actual level that changes your life. Now, in this practice, all of the blood is collected. I collect all of my blood and I give all of it. I think I'm at probably like 95%. And I'll tell you how I got to that percentage with peeing in toilets and such in a minute. But the higher the percentage of the blood that I can capture and give back to the earth directly correlates to how much energy comes back to me or is contained after my moon cycle. So when I first started, I was just doing the pads, and then I would go to the bathroom like normal. And if you're like me, maybe you are, when you pee, more blood comes out. And so when that blood comes out, it's lost and it goes into water, that's a different subject that goes very deep into different esoteric things. And then some of it I would wipe, and then I would go into the trash. And so I realized that I was losing maybe 20% to or maybe 30% to this process of my blood. And so then I've started capturing more of it, which I'll talk about in a minute. And as I did that, I had much more energy at the end of my cycle. I had much less loss of vitality, of life force, of energy that left. And I'm going, well, where is it leaving to? And it's like, well, it's, and this is where I went down these thought threads of, well, it's going to the trash, it's going into the toilet. And when it goes back to earth, it doesn't become depleted in you. And so actually at the end of your cycles, you'll have much more energy. Now, a couple other things. Okay, there's some things to this. I started working with a tribe, and I can't go into too much detail, and it was recommended to me that I do this work because it has such a profound effect on everything. On myself, on the consciousness of the planet, on the environment, on Earth. It has such a profound effect that it was that valuable for me to dive into, even though it's a lifestyle change. There is a lifestyle change component to that. So I want to talk about that for just a minute, because it's like, okay, now I've painted this picture of all of the benefits, you know, and we'll get into even deeper layers, but then it's like, okay, on a practical level, how? And I love these questions, and I make sure to do them all myself so that then I can share them with you. But if there's something that's that important, I will shift myself to make that a priority. And so it's good for us, it's good for the planet. And so what is somewhat required is to be gentle on your moon cycle, is to not continue at the distorted pace of distorted culture. It's to actually invite the moon's rhythms into your own life, the moon reflected in you, that has different flow, that has a death cycle, it has a letting go, it has this waxing and newness, it has a fullness, it has a waning. And so this invitation to really honor and begin to see the waters within your own body, within your own energetics, as a reflection of the moon's rhythms, right? That's what creates the tides. It's what creates these cycles that come back consistently every 28 days, unless we get out of balance and then, you know. But as we're in balance, we are in these cycles. And so to honor them is profound. So the obstacle belief that came up in this for me, which might come up in this for you, in the practical sense, is, well, if I take time to be in the phase of bleed, which means to rest, to be, to let go, to merge, particularly psychically. In Native tribes around the world, particularly Native American tradition, when the women bled, whatever they dreamed at that time was highly valuable and absolutely utilized for the direction of the future of the tribe. Like, that's how potent the medicine of the intuition, of the dreaming, of the psychic guidance that comes through it during this time is, which requires being in a cocoon, being incubated, which is why women had the red tent. If you don't know about the red tent, Google it. I'll do another video about it. And there's also a really good book called The Red Tent. It has its stuff, but it's pretty good transmission just to get into this energy of giving yourself. I recommend at least one day, that first day you're bleeding, to let yourself just completely be and do nothing. I know that could be hard, especially if you have job, family, kids, partners, all those different things. But what happens is when you begin to honor this and you begin to take this time, maybe it's an afternoon when you first start bleeding, maybe it's a day, maybe it's 2 days, 3 days. Traditionally, it's usually 3 days. So the red tent was 3 days. So it's those first 3 days of the bleed, you're not doing You can do a little bit, but not doing much. And I'll share a little bit about what I do during that time. And then what happens, because you give yourself the death, you give yourself this re-merging with the void, with the great cosmic mother, with this returning to the earth, like this deep process, and you really let yourself have it. The question was, if I'm not exercising during this time, I'll get into that in a second, and you're not working or doing stuff or highly active and out and about during this time, well, am I going to miss out? Like a FOMO? Also, am I going to maybe not be as fit because I'm taking 4 or 5 days off of exercise? Am I going to get as much work done? Am I going to satisfy my partner? Am I going, right? These things come up. This came up for me, and I hope that this is helpful for you. And the answer is absolutely yes. When you give yourself to this process, you are gifted it back like tenfold. And so what happens is when you give yourself to the bleed, in your follicular phase, when your estrogen picks back up, your energy picks back up, you have more energy, you have more vitality. So I have completely made up in my experience for all of the work that I didn't do, for all the exercise, for the horniness. All of the different things come online even more intensely. And so you're able to do all those things that you are trying to kind of drudge yourself through in those bleeding days. You're able to do it so much better during that follicular phase. You'll have that much more energy, which will make up for that time. So you can do it. I recommend 3 days. That's what I do. I actually do 3 full days, and then that 4th and 5th day is still pretty relaxed, though the energy starts to really kick in because I'm not having as much energy loss. If you can only do 1, that's fine. Even if you're just starting to be aware of being more conscious and kind to yourself, that's going to be helpful, right? Just beginning the awareness around this is really, really key. So a few other little details around that, and then I want to get into more of the practicalities, is that also this is a time of death. It's a time of letting go, and that is what is being released at this time. And so being incubated in that and not around a bunch of other people is really important. And also giving yourself a chance to not have to be also, say, sexual during this time. I know that it's like in our culture, the perpetual bloom. You should always be available. You should always be working. You should always be working out. And there's a lot of actual female product promotion that I'm seeing around that's like, yes, always be ready. It's like, okay, great. But I do feel major distortion in it. And I'm a very sensual being, so I'm not scared of saying this. I think it's very important to take that time as sacred, internal giving to yourself and not outputting any of that energy as well and taking that time away from that. And you can communicate this with your partner, you can express what's happening, and that energy exchange that might not be happening during that time, it will be made up for in the follicular phase, okay? You can express that to your man. And the thing is also when you're giving that to yourself, you're more full. And when the man can start to honor that in you and actually let that be a time for them to also release, let go, reorient, then and they are giving to you too during that time. Oh man, that level of connection and self-respect and respect for each other, it's gonna lead to positive things in the next phases, okay? And on the exercise front, from my own experience, this is just my own experience, because I do like being very active and I want to stay fit. I have noticed that even if I take 4 or 5 days completely off, I actually have this more strength, more vitality, and my body stays fitter looking as well. it's strange because you're like, well, you're not exercising. It's because it's balance, and balance is what is required for everything to work properly. So letting yourself not exercise. I've been doing the non-exercise for many moons, because I follow Taoist philosophy, and they talk about it all the time, where you want to be as horizontal as possible. You want to be losing as little blood as possible, because that blood is life force. That blood is life. It's life juice. It's unfertilized eggs, people. It's good stuff. So in that practice, they're very much so on being very horizontal for that time and not doing very much movement at all. I won't even sauna. I don't want anything that's really getting my blood flowing so that I lose more. So on that front as well, because then you're going to need to produce more blood, which takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of nutrients and resources, and we don't even want to go down that road because we're already having to nourish ourselves and rebuild our blood. So we don't want to force it to have to do more and work overtime. You know what I mean? So those are some pieces there. Now, one of the things to make this very success in your Moontime bleed is a bit of foresight and planning. It's really required. Because if you don't know when you're bleeding and then it just comes upon you and you hadn't had that planned and you already have other plans or are working or doing this thing, you can't do well with it. And also if you don't have, say, your pads ready, if you don't have food ready, if you're not ready, then you're not going to be able to sink into it as deeply and relish in the beauty of this sacred time. So my first recommendation is to start tracking your cycle. You gotta track it so that you know when you're gonna bleed. And then you can have it on your calendar and actually mark off, nope, not gonna do that social engagement. Oh, I'll try and change my work schedule. Oh, right, you can actually plan it in. So having and starting to track when you're gonna bleed and have that window is so, so key. So the first thing is to track your cycle. The second thing is to take time off for finished tasks. So this goes into the cycle of the 28 days and the different phases, which I'll go into in different videos, but you really want to be finishing projects. You don't want to be like trying to birth something while like death and release is happening. You want to be finishing projects, tidying up a few days before your moon cycle as far as like work goes, as far as exercise goes. And then for me, I'm a huge planner on having food ready too. Just all of it so that you're super taken care of and nourished. And so what I do is I make meals throughout my waxing phases of my cycle, and then I'll freeze some of the meals so that on my moon time I can just unfreeze something and have something ready to go. I don't need to make something right there and be, again, vertical. And also, if you have partners or if you have friends are on different timings of their moon cycle, you can always have your partner cook for you during that time and give to you during that time and let it be a moment of real receiving. I find it also really helpful to make sure that you have your pads and underwear ready. So that when you're ready to bleed, you don't just have to put in a tampon, or you don't have to grab a pad or like a disposable pad, but you have these tools ready to assist you for that process. Now, some of the things that I do during this timing is I'll read. I'll take it as a time to read and relax. I'll take it as a time to journal and to express and maybe muse on the different psychic or creative things coming through, the different dreams coming through. I might do some creative things like drawing or painting. I've taken up knitting, and I knitted this blanket for my moon time to mark this moment, this period. This period of this phase of my life where it's like, okay, I'm gonna bleed, bringing out the moon blanket. And then the other thing that I want to show you is this chamber pot. So when I talked about bleeding into the toilet and losing energy and losing life force, and then it connecting to the sewer system. Though my toilet is connected to septic, so it's technically going out onto the land where I live in Sedona. But still, I don't want it mixing with the water. I don't want it mixing with the sewer system at all. And so what I've started to do is I'll actually, if it's a little bit too cold outside or it's the middle of the night, I will actually pee into the chamber pot so that that blood I capture. Like, I capture maybe 20% of the blood of my Moontime just through this. And so it's so helpful so that it's not mixing. This is kind of next level. It's a bit, quote, extreme, but it's my job to experiment so that I can bring this stuff back to you, right? And so it's been really tremendous. Actually, Melanie from Ask Angels is the one that thought of that, because I didn't want to be mixing the blood with the water. And then she was like, what if you got a chamber pot? And I was like, Melanie, you're a genius. So thanks, Melanie, if you ever watch this. And so then I will go give that blood to the earth. And so now, moving back to these pads and more of the practicalities, and then how do I get the blood out of the pads and then give it to the earth bridge, you know, all these different details. Now, as far as the pads and underwear, let's talk more deeply and into the practicalities of this. My friend Jocelyn Dare, you guys know her, you've seen her on my channel. She's a big fan of the panties. I'm a big fan of the panties too. The links are down in the description. And these, particularly for me, I like if I do need to go out, even if it's just to the store, or if I did have some level of social event or something, I find them to be really inconspicuous. And they can absorb a lot of blood, so there's less chance of a bleed through, and they tend to have like a more attractive shape if you are wearing tighter clothes. And so these work really well for that, for me. And other people like my friend Jocelyn like want to wear them the whole Moontime. And so this is a really good option. And then the other option that I like, I prefer most of the time, because most of the time I'm indoors by myself at my house. And the reason I like these, which is a little bit weird, but I'm weird, you figured that out by now. If you made it this far in the video, you're like, whoa, you go through down some interesting roads, Bridge. I know. You're welcome. So is that I like to see the blood. I like to see how much I'm bleeding, and it's really easy to tell with these. Because they do absorb a lot, and they're not, you know, super leaky or anything like that. But I can see how much more blood I have. Whereas these are like endless wells. You just like keep going. You're like, where is the blood going? I don't even know. It's like goes into a different dimension or something. And so I like being able to see how much is there and how much I'm bleeding. And I don't care if it's a little bit like, you know, bulgy because I'm at home and I'm usually wearing like loose clothes and dresses and stuff like that. So it's no big deal to me to just put around the underwear. And so I do a combination of both. As far as the amount, I have pretty medium periods. You know, they've decreased, like I said. But I use I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got like 6 of the pads that go on the underwear. And then I have about 3 of these, which is better for like at night too. I can go 2 days straight with those, and then I'll need to rinse and wash for the rest of my moon cycle. So I'll need to do 1 rinse and wash through the moon cycle with that many. So if you want to always not have to even think about it through your whole moon, you could get more. Or if you just want to do it every day and rinse and wash, then that's something too. I'm going to show a clip right now of how I rinse and wash. So disclaimer, you're going to see blood and it's going to be messy looking. Okay, so be ready. So this is me rinsing them. So you just put them in a bit of water, not too much. Remember, we're not wanting to mix it too much with water, just enough to saturate and get the blood out. And you want to squeeze out the blood and then rinse it in and squeeze out the blood. And then you have gotten most of it out of the pads then at that point. And then you have this amazing bowl or pot or jar of blood that has some water in it so that you could release it, but it's way less than peeing into toilets. And then you can go and offer that to the earth. And you're not losing very much of the blood at all. And this is where it gets really, really profound, is offering this blood to the earth. Now, when you do this, and I have a whole other video about offering the blood to the earth. This was before I started this process, so I think I do say stuff about moon cups and that. And I have other videos that you can watch too. I have a couple others on this subject. But when you're offering your blood to the earth, you really want to do it in the right place. And the right place is ideally in a location that you want your genetics to be connected to. Let's just put it that way. And a place that you want to nourish, and a place that you want to have a communication exchange. Now, granted, I know a lot of people live in apartment buildings, in cities, I don't know where you live, like all different kinds of places. And so then the question becomes, actually, I was just in a conversation with Jocelyn the other day, and she's like, well, you could give it to your houseplant. We're talking to Leora Alexandra about this. Well, you're getting privy to my girl world. These are the kinds of conversations that we're having and that the influencers are having. So it's really beautiful. And she was like, well, you can give it to your houseplants. That's what Jocelyn was saying. And I agree, you can give it to your houseplants. But what I recommend, because this is the beauty of this. Is this one of the clean ones? I'll show you one of the brand new ones. Is that I'm in Arizona. So granted, if you're in a super humid place, it might start to get a little bit weird and gross. But I'm in Arizona, so I can bleed into this, and then I can just actually let it sit out in the air, and it'll dry very quickly. And then it's this dry blood pad. I cannot believe we're talking about this. And at the same time, it's so important. So thanks for being here. And so then at that point, it's really easy to travel with. So you can just fold it up, and you go like this, and you fold it up, and then you put it in your purse or in your bag, and so it's not gross, and it's all kind of hidden and, inconspicuous. And then when you get home to the place where you live, or when you're ready to rinse them and to gift them. In Leora's case, sorry Leora, I'm totally talking about you now. She was in Los Angeles, and she's like, well, I don't have anywhere to gift it, live in this, apartment complex. And I said, well, you can let them dry, and then you can wait and take them to Sedona, because she just got a house here. You can take them to Sedona and then rinse them and then gift them in Sedona if that's where you want your energy to be connected to. That's a way that you can do it. And I do recommend, if it's possible, if we're going this far, to gift it in a place that's not highly dense in terms of, a lot of people, a lot of concrete, a lot of electromagnetics. What's so great about these is that you can bring it all together when you're ready, and say 1 or 2 times on your cycle, maybe drive 15 minutes out of town to a park and give it to the tree. You can have that mobility. It doesn't need to be, which happens with the moon cup, where you're pouring it into a cup and then it starts to, smell if you don't do it right away, and then it's a thing. With this, it's actually a little bit easier. And so when you're ready, you can then gift it, and gifting it to a place that you do want your energy to be connected to. For me, it's in my backyard. It's in my backyard right here in Sedona. I'm very lucky to be in this position. And I'm not just using the chamber pot. I'm also I'll go out and I'll pee, on the land back there, let the blood go. I will go out there and sit in a dress and let myself just bleed straight into the earth. So this is a intermediary, but I will just sit there and let it absolutely nourish the land. And the land has transformed in my backyard. Granted, I did put in a medicine wheel, so there's some combination of things happening there, but the land is so vital. The energy of it is so much more palpable than it was when I first moved here, and I'm so psychically connected to it, and the trees that I gift it to are just so vibrant and alive, and it's profound. And also, we're gonna close up here in just a minute, but I do want to say that I'm a traveler, right? I've traveled a lot, and I've gone to a lot of sacred sites. And in my mid-20s, I would give my blood to lots of places. I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere on the planet. And I thought that that was the best thing for me. You know, I'm like, yeah, I want my genetics to be all up in Glastonbury and Hawaii and Shasta, you know, on all these different sacred sites. And what I've realized with age and time and experience is that in actuality, having my energy more incubated and not as scattered, that's what it tends to do. It actually ends up feeling scattering. Though I feel good about that because it's like I'm psychically connected to those places and that's pretty fun for me. But I do like being more contained with where my blood is and not just like scattering it in different places all the time. Even if it's, say, I'm mostly in Sedona. Oh, I'm just scattering it around Sedona, but it's all Sedona. I'm like, nah, I just want it in my backyard. Like, I just want it right here, you know? And I might get inspiration to go over to like another tree or this other site and do something in that way too. But there's something about containing it. And that's what I'm saying. Even, I mean, sprinkling it at sacred sites around the world is not as bad as having it be in sewer systems and dumps. So that's like scattered, you know, advanced version. But nonetheless, that's the same idea of containing, not having it all like leak out. And it's crazy because it's not leaked out when it goes into the earth. And when it goes into the earth in a place that you continue to build a relationship with and continue to nourish, and then it can nourish you. And I feel like there's a give back. There's the reciprocity that happens with the earth and that location that you give it to. If I give it to somewhere across the planet and then I just never go back there, it's like it can't fully give it back to me, is what it feels like. And so just remembering that containment as a part of this conversation as well. So I think that's about it for this first big deep dive into blood. And I will say one last thing, which is starting to get used to handling your blood. And you know, you're gonna be up in there needing your blood, you know, peeing blood, like you already do. We're just accepting it, but it's amazing and it's real and it's vital, and let it tap you into this deeper, primal, wild, connected being and human and woman that you are. And in that frequency, in that dance of your own flow, you will be in greater communication with all else in the universe that flows in beautiful rhythm and timing as well. And you will begin dancing with the moon and with the earth and with the stars and with your own womb. And in that is ultimate empowerment. So thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for being open to this new perspective. There's lots more, but this is a great first deep plunge, and I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate you being here. And if you made it to this far in the video, yes. And I'll say this, because if you made it this far, then it's probably pretty likely you're gonna go in this direction. And if that's the case, I was feeling, and I'm going, okay, this video will probably get anywhere from, over the next couple years, like 10 to 30,000 views. 10 to 30,000 views. So let's just say that even 1% of that 30,000, it's going to be more than that. I know, because if you clicked on this, you went all the way through, it's going to be more than this. But 300 women. But maybe it's 3,000 women. Maybe it ends up being 10,000 women that start moving in this direction. Say, just because of this video, that then start utilizing and fully giving all of their blood and not putting it in dumps and sewer systems, and truly honoring their rhythm. That's profound. 300 women, 3,000 women doing this, that starts to change things. I've felt the huge changes in my life, and as you've heard me sprinkle in the different conversations with my friends, all of my friends' moon cycles are different now because of the work that I'm doing. And we have this sphere of influence with the women that we're around, with the men that we're around. And so I highly recommend you having these conversations, teaching, sharing, experimenting, like what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and then also sharing this video with women and with men that you feel would be open to this and it would be helpful, because this is big. This changes the environment. This changes and nourishes the planet. We are a microcosm of the macrocosm. It is helping the earth when we're in flow and when we let the flow happen. So really, really tune into that, and also thank yourself for being a part of this shift. In a time on the planet where distorted, strange things are happening with women on their periods, it's a really amazing time to be in this remembrance and to be a way shower and to anchor this energy in yourself, because that transmits out when you are in balance. So thank you again so much for watching. Please check out these links down below and get yourself your pads and underwear. Share this again with anyone that you feel it would be helpful with. Comment below and share if you do it. Sure, maybe you're already doing it. There's women for sure already doing this, but I hope that these deeper layers assisted you. You can share what things did assist you, all of it. And be sure to hit the like button, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell button so that you get notifications every time I do new videos. And here, maybe you're watching this in the future. Oh my gosh, I'm talking to you in the future right now. And if so, I do have a podcast coming out in May 2021. Who knows when you'll see this? And so go check that out, because I have more long conversations about these amazing topics, particularly around the feminine and awakening and relationships and the earth. So be sure to go check that out as well. And if it hasn't come out yet, be ready, be waiting. Okay? I love you. Thank you. Talk to you next time.